Dana and Jen, thank you guys so much for joining us. If you guys are listening, you may have heard Dana on our podcast twice before talking about collagen, GI issues in endurance athletes. And first time Jen here, and Jen is going to be doing her two truths and a lie because Dana has already been done this for us a couple times. So thank you ladies so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Of course. So before we're going to do a deep dive today into your guys' whole career history, maybe we'll go back as far as schooling, all of that stuff. But before the listeners get to learn too much about you, Jen, go ahead and fire off your two truths and a lie.
So do I just say three things and then you guys have to guess?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Say three things. I'm going to note them down here and then we're going to guess. Well, Dana might know which one's the answer. So.
Okay. I grew up in the country.
Okay.
I used to be a competitive kickboxer.
Oh, okay.
And I ride a dirt bike.
Oh.
Motorized dirt bike.
Okay. So I'm going to guess, but don't tell us the answer because we'll reveal it at the end for our listeners. And Amanda, if you want to, for our listeners, Amanda's mic isn't working. So she's on the video in the background. If you want to give us what you think, if it's 1, 2, or 3, I'm going to go with, I read your whole CV, which by the way, listeners, if you want to check out a serious CV, I read Jen's CV. It is 10 pages and it is impressive. So I didn't see any competitive kickboxing on there. So I'm going to go with that as the lie, but don't tell me if that is correct. Also, of course, there's not dirt biking on your CV either, but I could see maybe doing that. What do you think, Amanda? 1, 2, or 3? I'll announce it. Okay. Amanda's going with she didn't grow up in the country. Oh, I did see some stuff about Canada on there. So maybe Amanda's right, but we'll get into that. All right. So we'll guess it. You'll reveal it at the end. But why don't we start doing a deep dive, kind of taking us, both of you guys, back in schooling, career. Whoever wants to take off first, let us know kind of how you got into it.
Yeah, I can lead us into that. So a funny part about this new endeavor with performance nutrition professionals is a long, long time ago, back in Canada, in the country, in the city of Vancouver, actually. Jen was she moved across the country to take on basically the first full-time sport dietitian role at Sport Med BC. Wow. In Canada. So it was she was like the first mover and shaker with the field and really honestly set the standard in Canada.
Awesome.
And I was lucky enough to do a rotation with Jen during my dietetic internship, which is a bit different in Canada. You do 10 months straight. It's very structured. They're like, you can't design it. You can design your certain rotations, but it's very structured. It's very laid out. And it's 10 months full time, not paid, etc. So I was lucky enough to score a rotation with Jen, and right out of my internship, I ended up getting hired on full time with Sport Med BC. And then Jen and I both ended up working with the Canadian Sport Institute, sort of one after another, some crossover with different sports. She moved to Victoria to do her master's, and then I continued on in Vancouver, and then Jen moved to the US, and then I moved to the US. So and then I moved to Tasmania to do my PhD, and Jen went to the NFL. So we have a similar trajectory, but I think the great part about this is like we were both able to really do a lot of the sort of heavy lifting in the field of sport nutrition in Canada. We both ended up going to the US. Partly has to do with money.
Yeah. That's a topic we were talking about yesterday as a team, like regarding ads, like Indeed job ads for RD positions. And yeah, that's a whole other topic we could get into, but yeah, it is. Yeah, that's interesting. Go on.
Ridiculous.
Sorry.
No, it's ridiculous sometimes.
Yeah.
Like insane. And when you look at the amount of schooling, even just the RD credential requires, it's ridiculous, some of the job postings. And I mean, you always have room to push back, I think, for sure, if you're really interested in a job. But so Jen and I, in the last, I guess, year, for everybody, lots of things have changed. And we sort of were at a point in our career too, where I think, we'd reached a pinnacle in a lot of areas, and we're at a point like we wanted to really help train the elite sport dietitian. Like there's not a lot of training for like, how do you really work in elite sport?
Yeah.
What skills do you need? What knowledge? And there's nowhere to really go for a really clear pathway of like, this is the depth of knowledge you need.
Mm-hmm.
These are the like hands-on skills you need. Here's all the other stuff you need to know to really excel in elite sport, and really be, you know, like a world-class practitioner. So that's essentially what motivated us and to form Performance Nutrition Professionals. So we're digging into this entrepreneurial world, and it's definitely been it's been great for sure.
Yeah.
Lots of I mean, as a business owner, as you know, lots of just small little things to take care of, and we're learning as we go, making lots of mistakes.
Oh yeah.
We are running our first course in Colorado Springs at University of Colorado Springs, June 23rd to 25th.
Yes. And we will link that for the listeners if you're interested in registering for that. Is that going to be video as well, or is it all like in person, hands-on?
Yeah, Jen could take that one. Yeah.
Live human being contact.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
We're kicking it old school, like something Dana and I both kind of commented on, and we've worked through, I mean, so many different leagues and with pro athletes at the highest level throughout, you know, a span of almost 35 years between the two of us. And something we both said was like, we've never really applied for a job. It's all been through our networks and people that we know, people we've met at conferences, people we've actually met as human beings and made relationships with. Mm-hmm. And we feel like post-COVID, we've totally lost that. And the young, you know, I've got kids that send me requests to intern with me, just like, can I have a job with you? Here's my resume, without even like, you know, it's just kind of like, right, you know, hello, why would I just give you a job just because you're sending me your resume, you know, like, and so we've lost that. I think that there's a cohort of people that have lost that. And I know for me, and it's probably because I have some undiagnosed attention deficit, I just can't do web learning. I can take it for maybe a few minutes, and I just can't. I sit here and I multitask. And so even though I'll listen to something, I'm not absorbing it. I'm really truly not. And that's just me. So we're taking a leap of faith here and just trying to reinvigorate the thought of meeting other people and also the value of networking as part of our course.
I love that. And I kind of on that similar note to learning wise, Dana, in your guys' recent webinar, you mentioned drawing out by hand visually when you're reading a journal article. Mm-hmm. And as a visual learner, I heard you say that and I was like, that is genius. Like I need to start doing it that way. I love that. Because I'm very much a visual learner as well. Mm-hmm. So yeah, different tips like that on how people can kind of absorb information better. And like you're saying, getting hands-on it's important. So
absolutely.
That'd be amazing.
And I think and this is maybe something that I'm a bit biased, and maybe Jen too, because we're both from Canada. So I've had that training and that exposure. Jen has worked internationally with the USOC, had lots of exposure to different athletes, and then also now working in the MLS, just lots of different cultures and people to work with. And I've worked pretty much in like almost every continent, worked in Europe quite a bit, the UK, Australia. So bringing some of that knowledge and the way that different countries or different continents do our field and the standards of practice and how practitioners are trained, part of me wants to bring that to the US. I find, and this might be, I'm not trying to be critical, but I find the US field is very US centric. And there's so much to learn from other countries. The UK has a fantastic sports system. Australian Institute of Sport, I mean, the last few years has been a bit of a change there, but they were like the hub of sport nutrition research and at the leading edge of practice. And I think you don't know what you don't know. And, the US is such a big country that there's lots to check out in terms of our field across the country, but I really encourage people to look outside our borders as well. So we want to bring some of that knowledge to practitioners as well. Just kind of thinking outside the box.
Yeah, definitely. Jen, do you want to give us a little bit? I know Dana looped in a little bit of your guys' history together, but do you want to give us a little bit more of a background on your kind of coming into the RD world and sport and all that stuff?
Yeah. So, I mean, really, it's funny because it was hard yards, when I was in high school, I knew I wanted to be a dietitian when I was in high school. And I remember because I'd met an RD at a athlete, symposium that I was invited to.
Cool.
And she wasn't a performance RD, but all of a sudden I was like, I love food. I love science. It's a profession that I can get a job in. And so I remember when I was 18 years old, I was like, I want to be the sport dietitian for the Toronto Maple Leafs, which was our, big time NHL team.
Yeah.
And then as I started to explore that goal, I realized that didn't exist. There was no full-time jobs in the country. Nobody, it was consultancy. I did a rotation with the Leafs consulting dietitian and was really discouraged because it was not what I thought it was,
Yeah.
And so, when this position came up in Canada for the first kind of full-time program in sport nutrition, the pay was terrible. And I had no money. But I was like, this is it. And so people thought I was crazy because I went for the job. The program also had some sponsors associated with it, which was a big faux pas in Canada at the time to have any sort of sponsorship with a sport program. And basically I just was like, how do I do this? And actually went to the Australian Institute of Sport, grabbed some mentors from there, and just hard yarded it. I realized after a few years of running the program, I didn't have a good physiology background, and I needed that to really be a good sport dietitian. I had to not just check the box and say I knew sport physiology. I had to do it. So I went back and did a full exercise phys degree, nothing to do with nutrition. There was no nutrition curriculum as part of it, and kind of learned through that. And then I realized, oh, well, I need to learn even more. So I did the IOC Diploma program in sport nutrition, which was a 2-year, Dana did it as well. I was the first part of the first graduating class of that, because I was like, I need to go deep into this area. I need to learn. And my dietetic internship didn't give that to me. And then it was like, okay, well, Canada said to me, well, the Olympics are over and we don't have any more funding for you, because Canada's a government funded sport program. And then I was like, well, I've spent 9 years educating myself in this area, and I don't want to work 2 days a week and work the rest at a diabetes clinic. That's just not me. Yeah. So I defected. I committed the biggest sin, and I went to Team USA. I as a Canadian, to go work for the US team is like, what are you doing? And they actually, it was a wonderful experience there with a great group of people. And it was a big risk again.
Yeah.
And I worked in there with combat sports, which I loved, and was able to do some really phenomenal nutritional physiology work with them, because making weight there's so much incredible physiology that comes out of that. And we had guys with core temperature sensors in while they were making weight, and heart rate monitors, and really breaking down the science of weight cutting, which was so much fun. And we had a tremendous amount of success. And then through meeting people and just doing a bunch of different projects, kind of got looped in with the NFL for the New Orleans Saints, consulting with them, and then got an offer to go full-time in the NFL with the Chicago Bears to run their sports science and nutrition program, which was a really fun opportunity for me, because I've always had a blended practice in both physiology and nutrition, and an opportunity to basically build a program from scratch in the NFL. Not an NFL person. When the Saints first called me, I asked my husband who the Saints were. I remember going to meet with them and looking up who Drew Brees was. Being like, okay, Drew Brees, remember that? And then I've spent half my career in the NFL, working in that world. And then after I was with the Bears for 7 years and went through a bunch of coaching regimes, and it kind of got to the point where I had kind of been there, done that. And football is really finicky. This could be a whole episode of working in the world of pro football. And so I was kind of done, and it was time to come back to Colorado and just start something new. And it was so funny, because I remember when Dana called me, and and I had been thinking about this course and doing this course, and she's like, what do you got going on? Like, do you want to partner with something? And she's like, I'm available. And I just thought to myself, and I respect Dana so much, and I thought to myself, like, a voice in my head said, when are you ever going to have an opportunity to have both of you guys available, with the amount of experience between the two of us and the varied amount of, places we've lived and things we've seen? And I mean, if you read Dana's CV, it'll blow your mind. So I
did.
I'm like, hell yes, like we have to do this. And so it literally was a phone call. I remember standing in my garage, I was working out, and it was like, oh, okay, wait a minute, let's try to give this a go. And so it's been awesome. And here we are. And I think for both of us, we've been so blessed with such a like incredible career scope. And as we mentor young RDs, I've got quite a few of them saying they're not sure they want to stay in the profession because they're 80% of their job is, let's say, organizing a fueling station, and they just feel like, or doing post-game meals, and they just feel like their job is nutrition logistics. And while there's a time and place for that as part of your career, and Dana and I have both done that, what we want to do is really help, especially from that nutrition physiology side, help these RDs realize like you can get deeper in your practice. You can analyze blood work. You can do your own sweat sodium analysis. You can run an RMR cart and do metabolic assessment from that. Like we really want to teach these young RDs, like you can go deeper in your practice, apply these skill sets, which will hopefully enable you to enjoy your work more. And also open the door to other opportunities that are going to fulfill you.
Yeah, that's awesome. And with the course you guys are offering, is there any working with like athletes, or is this primarily mentoring RDs?
Yeah, so it's pretty much all a professional based curriculum. And what we've done is we have 5 modules in kind of deep, and we go deep into each practice area. And what's fun about our modules is we really teach you the theoretical framework. So we want you to have an understanding of the evidence. We want you to get comfortable with who the researchers are in this field. We want to go deep into a practice area. Like, for example, our 360 hydration assessment. We're not only going to talk about fluid balance, but we're going to talk about sweat sodium assessment. Then we're also going to talk about core temperature assessment. We're going to go through the whole gamut of hydration management. But then the second part of each module is about 3.5 hours, 3 hours in length. We start to do the practical application of it. So in our, again, going back to our sweat sodium or our 360 hydration assessment, we'll have stations where you can actually practice your patch technique, play around with some of the new technologies, put some sensors on, spit into a vial and see your amount. So we want people to like not only learn the theory, but then say, okay, if you have $0 in your budget, here's how you can do assessment with this tech or non-tech. If you have $20,000 a year, here's what you can do and spend here. But really then take it with the goal of every module, you go away and you go to your practice and you have a skill set, a new skill set, not just theory in your head. I can go back to my team and say, hey, I know how to do this now. And here's how I know the tools, I know the tech, I know how to do it, and I know how it's going to help my group. So we really, really want to empower people to really have that change at a practice level. That's really important to us.
I think that's awesome. And it makes me think too, I mean, with your guys' experience and all the goodness, like you're saying, the gadgets and new things coming out, which ones are actually applicable to pull information from and utilize. And goodness, I mean, the core temperature sensor thing, I know there's an external one now that's out that I've had athletes ask me about, that's on the heart rate strap, and then different glucose monitors in sport, and how do we apply that information, and all of the gadgets that are out. I mean, I'm sure you guys have experience with that, and whether or not it's valuable information to apply to an athlete, which is helpful to get through all the noise, right?
It's funny because the tech is exploding, and it's getting to the point now where it's almost sometimes your athletes are telling you about it before you even know about it.
Right.
And so we're in an interesting time. We're in a really interesting time for that, for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
I think what we can really give practitioners too is just that critical thinking of, and it's critical thinking, and it's navigating your environment when it comes to making decisions around tech. It's, how are your actions going to change in your environment? Can it influence what your goals are or your performance priorities? Is it going to make you more impactful as a practitioner or impact your athletes' health and performance better or more? And then also navigating, who do you need to keep happy in your sport team? If sometimes you'll make decisions not necessarily based on science or practice, but based on, I need to keep this general manager happy right now, so we're going to do this. No, I don't think it's the best idea. But also just giving practitioners that critical thinking system. And that's one of the reasons we ran that first webinar, was just to get the basis of, here's why you need to be on top of research. Here's how to actually do it when you're really busy. And then I think one of the other barriers we're trying to remove for practitioners is sometimes we get pigeonholed into a lot of the food service, food logistics piece, and that's our whole day. And it's a lot of work. Like, you're constantly, by the time you're doing like flight meals and smoothie stations and et cetera, it's your full day. Like, you don't have time to do anything else. So we also, in this course, have extended it and have CEUs for strength and conditioning through NSCA. Yeah, that's the right acronym. And then for athletic trainers as well. So what we would love to do is have more practitioners that are not RDs trained in some of the foundational daily training environment stuff, so that can free up some of that space, so RDs can dig in deeper to the more impactful performance nutrition strategies. So that's the plan there. I think we're learning about different ways to sort of tap into the strength conditioning world a little bit better, et cetera, to kind of help communicate what we're trying to do, because we know strength and conditioning coaches are doing a lot of the nutrition in the daily training environment. Like, if you look at how many NBA teams have a full-time dietitian, it's less than half, probably maybe a quarter. So, who's doing stuff on the road, who's organizing post-game stuff, post-game recovery, nutrition. It's the performance coaches, the strength conditioning coaches. So making sure that they have the evidence-based knowledge and hands-on skills as well to do that at the top level. And that will, I think, streamline, best practice performance nutrition, but also free up space for RDs to dig deeper and have more of an impact.
Yeah, I think that's great. It makes me think too, with the endurance world, I've had many athletes come to me having their coaches who program their training tell them to do fasted training sessions, and they don't understand why. Or are you familiar with like the inside testing service? How they have their calculations that will give them information on how to adjust programming to whether it's kind of move that fat oxidation, pinpoint one way or another. I think a lot of the athletes don't know what that means, but I also think the coaches don't understand how to explain always the nutrition aspects of it coming from, because it's two different worlds there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's a big important piece of the puzzle there to kind of like connect.
Yeah. And it's funny you say that. Yeah, because we're right in the process right now of chatting with US Olympic Committee and their coaching development program. And exactly that, because I think I read a stat, there's like, over 350,000 just registered coaches in the country.
Wow.
And, there's only 66,000 registered dietitians. And probably of that, there's probably only less than maybe 6,000 that are sport RDs. So, we're outnumbered. And especially once I always say this to some people, if you think about the pro leagues and how we're not even there, people think, oh, I can't believe every NFL team doesn't have a full-time RD. Well, guess what? That's the NHL has still there's like a handful in the NHL. Okay. So if we can't even if we're not even at the point where we're supporting the most elite that can afford them,
right?
Then imagine once you get past the D1 level, and those poor RDs have like athlete to RD ratios of like 7,000 to 1. As soon as you get down to like high school, the majority, the mushroom of the population, there's no support, and it's the coach.
Yeah. And
so we really truly believe in educating that population, as what you're saying, with some evidence-based background, just so that they feel comfortable, because the reality is they're probably never going to hire someone. So they are going to be the nutrition professional in that. And they're the strength coach, and they're the psychologist, and they're the doctor, and they're the trainer, so those people are really important.
Yeah. Yeah. I know you guys obviously have a vast history of experiences. Do you guys want to share some stories of some best practices or kind of like takeaway kind of lessons learned that were maybe eye openers for each of you?
I'd love Jen to share just her development with body composition assessment, because she's a level 3 Isaac, and
awesome.
Jen's the one who kind of brought best practice skin fold assessment to Canada, if not maybe North America. I'd love Jen to share that sort of journey.
What's funny is now I feel like I'm like the old dog because I've worked with almost every system out there. And it's changed based on my sport environment. But yeah, so a million years ago in Canada, you know, I learned about this ISAC training that the Australians were doing. And it was basically a standardized technique to skin fold assessment. And why it was so interesting was because, and it made sense, because as you could probably imagine, and we've seen people do it, you know, there's so much variability with where you can put that caliper. And most people aren't just doing one-stop body comp. We're always doing serial measurements because we're trying to track change. This isn't like a state fair where you're like, let me do your body comp and walk away. So you really want to standardize your assessment methodology. And so it was this course. And I was like, wow, this is awesome. It's international. However, there was nothing available in North America. So I went over to Australia to take my ISAC level 1 at the AIS. Yeah, I had I've done so many things in my life where I literally had no money and just like, I literally stayed in this really creepy hostel with like, it was, one day I'll tell you that.
But you have the hustle muscle though.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I call it. You have the hustle muscle. And that is an important quality.
Yeah. I like that. I'm stealing it.
Yeah.
So I, go over there. I'm literally staying in a hostel full of drug addicts. No joke, because it was $50 a night, and I'm going to their physiology conference and then their ISEC. And I'm like, this is incredible. We need to do this. And so I befriended the course presenters and then brought the first course to Canada, basically almost a year later.
Wow.
And then that became a yearly event at our Canadian Sports Center. And then when I went down to the US Olympic Committee, we kept it going and we taught a course a year down there as well. And what I found really interesting was in the Olympic world, that type of body composition assessment was really handy because we're traveling all over the place. So I can't take a bod pod. I can't take a DEXA with me. I can't take a BIA machine. I need a tool that I can take around the world. And so that's kind of where we all just got trained up on it. And level 1 is skin folds and some breaths. And then level 2 is kind of a talent identification series of measurements where you kind of measure the entire body. There's 32 or 36 measurements. I can't remember off the top of my head now. There's a bunch.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating because that type of data is often used for talent ID programs, specifically in Australia, as well as Cuba is a huge user of that as well, interestingly enough. And so that kind of I started to get involved in some talent ID projects with diving and just some sports where you kind of biomechanically have to be a certain way. So, just trying to look at characteristics of our best and then look at the rest. And so we could use it as part of talent ID identification with young divers, for example. If all of our guys have these wingspans and have, certain limb length ratios on their lower body because they have to generate a lot of force on let's say springboard, we just started doing really cool projects like that. And then when I moved into the NFL, I realized that, first of all, I can't do these on linemen because they're too big. The caliper just doesn't work.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Yeah. And then the length of time to do an assessment, in football, everything, there's no time for anything. It's just meetings. Mm-hmm. And we had a bod pod. And so I, was like, screw this, but no, this is all we have. And so I used that machine for a bunch of years, learned a lot about it, and then was able to, with a construction project, was able to get us a DEXA. Nice. And I had used DEXA as well at the US Olympic Committee. We had a DEXA and skin folds, but was able to kind of really just learn a lot of nuance and a lot of different ways you can use the tech, the pros and cons, the things you have to look out for. And it's kind of been just a passion project of mine. And what's really kind of fun is working in the NFL, everybody was just tech heavy. We want a DEXA, we want a bod pod. And then one of my mentors, Francis Holloway, who is a level 4, who's like a grand poobah in ISEC, he's actually now running around NFL teams doing level 2 assessments and helping to do some talent ID about, basically something called the muscle to bone ratio, which is how much muscle can a body hold. Wow. To help teams determine how heavy they can prescribe a player to be. And so I'm really proud of that, because I'm like, ISAC 2, we're back. Yeah. We're in the NFL. And so it's really interesting. It's the whole world is just really fascinating, a body composition assessment, and any tool can work. It's just, you have to understand what you standardize. And like I say in some of my chats, the only gold standard is killing your athlete and peeling them like an orange. So there's no gold standard. That's the gold standard, literally. And that's what some of our skin fold equations are based off of, cadaver analysis, where they segment out the body. And so everyone's like, I have a DEXA, that's gold standard. No, it's not. There's error to that too. So, and yeah.
With the DEXA, for example, and the Isaac caliper situation, I mean, how are you seeing, or what types of differences are you seeing between those? I know, goodness, if I saw someone do like a hydrostatic dunk tank versus a DEXA, like they could read 10% higher. Yes.
Exactly. And that's why you never compare them.
Yeah.
And that's why I've had athletes come to me. We use BIA at my club. I was this. Why am I now this on your DEXA? Because they're totally different technologies. Yeah. You can't compare the two. The gold standard is killing you. We can't do that. Literally, that's literally the gold standard. So I'm just like, we just have to pick our tech and and start our serial measurements using this. Because skin folds, with skin folds, we used to always use something called sum of 7, which was just the adding up the 7 sites, and you just get a total number, like 57, for example. Yeah. And I loved that, because if I took those numbers and plugged them into 5 different types of equations to give me a body fat percent, that could be variable by 5%, 10%, depending on the type of equation you use, because they're all based on different populations. So I loved using the sum of 7, because then I didn't have to worry about, in my head, knowing that, like, is this really your body fat percent, or is it just like, this is just an estimate based on an equation? So that's where you run into problems too, is that, even on the bod pod, I could pick a Brozek or a Siri and I got a different result. So anyway, it's just, you kind of have to really, as you can tell by me rambling about this, it's a really fascinating area that I feel like it shocks me when I meet RDs that aren't really well-versed, because I'm like, 90% of what you do is helping people change the body comp. 90%, probably that, like, everybody knows, I need to lose weight, I need to gain weight. They come to us, and you have to track it to show that you're doing your job. And if you don't have a depth of knowledge for the tech that you're using to track it, or if you're not tracking it, you're just going by the scale, which, okay, but like, let's even understand that. It just blows my mind.
Yeah.
Like I was talking to an RD the other day about just serial weighing, and, they didn't have any tech. Serial weighing and the impact of the menstrual cycle on that, or the impact of them having a heavy carbohydrate meal before, or them being constipated, or like when you are in weight class sports, you understand every single ounce and where it comes from. And she just had no idea. Like, it was like, oh, if they eat a bowl of pasta the night before, they're going to be a little heavier in the morning because of the glycogen. Yes. So anyway, I'm blabbing, but it's an area we really got to get really good at, since it's our primary practice area.
I think
soy sauce will do it. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's fun. It's fun to.
It is fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's an excellent point for the athlete listeners, actually, because goodness, many times I'll have people question me or send me a message, and they'll say, like, I had a race, I burned 4,000 calories. I'm heavier the next day. And can you, do either one of you want to, I'd love for them to hear it from somebody else. Want to get into that. I mean, I know Jen just hit a few of the things that could impact that, but do you want to explain why?
Go ahead, Dana.
Yeah, definitely an endurance sport. That's something we deal with a lot. I work in World Tour cycling. So some of the Grand Tours athletes, they're burning incomprehensible amounts of energy, but then will gain weight on the scale throughout 21 days of racing. Why? How can that be possible? Like, it's almost impossible to overeat that much. It is like, if I look at the structure, they basically eat 2 meals, food on the bike, go to bed. It's like, you just can't, you just want them to. And so they really worry. A lot of athletes will end up under fueling because they're scared of gaining weight during a Grand Tour, especially when the mountain stages or the more hillier stages are towards the end. Part of it is, and I won't get really molecular here, but there's shifts in fluid balance. When you have an inflammatory response from exercise stress, you will get sort of shifts in fluid balance. So you might get some more edemic responses. So you'll get sort of, you'll get fluid, your body holding fluid. And it will also shift with sodium balances. So if you're also doing an endurance type event and you're taking in a lot of sodium and you haven't really figured out what your exact sweat sodium losses are, et cetera. Some athletes I've found too are just really sensitive to sodium. We don't really have a molecular basis for that, but some athletes will just retain water a lot more with sodium. And sometimes some athletes will just take way too much sodium during an endurance event. I think we take a lot more than we actually need. So those are some of the reasons, but I just try not to get athletes to freak out too much about that, but we try to find out if weight really is important with like a multi-day stage race, then we try to figure out, how can we keep your weight more stable?
Mm-hmm.
What are we doing what are we doing nutritionally that is, causing more edema? We might work on inflammation a little bit. We might do sweat sodium analysis to make sure. And then there's some physiology pieces that we would also adjust sort of post-race too, to help just with recovery and reducing inflammation.
Yeah. I think they're all great points. And then I also have mentioned to my athletes too, I mean, if you weigh all the food that you're eating on those big effort days, is going to weigh physically more than what you're eating on a rest day. So it's literally just adding more mass.
Absolutely.
To your body. I think that's
Female
always
athletes who eat a massive amount of vegetables after a race, eat like a family-sized bowl of salad and call that a recovery meal.
Right.
That also adds bulk volume.
Yes. Yeah.
Not just our females, but I see it a lot more in female cycling.
Yeah, definitely. Let's see. Any kind of best practices that you want to share, Dana, after Jen's?
Yeah, I mean, I think one area, and this is more probably just just a world that I'm deep into right now, but I think RDs understanding more about female athlete nutrition. I think a lot of us are jumping on it because it's a thing right now. There's a lot of people investing research money into it. There's Kate Ackerman has a whole center now for female athlete nutrition, which is phenomenal. But I think that as a dietitian, trying not to get ahead of your depth of knowledge, there's a lot of, there's your and people who are in the camp of you need to work out in accordance with your cycle.
Oh, yeah.
That is really doesn't have a lot of teeth
Right.
to it yet. But I think definitely, just having worked in World Tour cycling with men and women, really understanding relative energy deficiency, and understanding the psychology of our relative energy deficiency in sport for males and females, so that you don't in a way make mistakes with an athlete. It's really, I think it's easy to, with a lot of this remote consulting, to miss body language and to not pick up on things right away. So I think just really digging deep, if you are working in, sports that are more likely to have higher rates of REDs or low energy availability, just to really dig into that area, understand the physiology, understand what's going on with hormones, and understand the psychology of athletes, and trying not to, assume that an athlete is intentionally getting into that space. Quite often it happens inadvertently, with just lack of knowledge and just lack of tools. And also, I think not assuming that an athlete is in REDs because they are not getting their cycle. There's also a flip side to that, where an athlete's weight is pretty normal, but they're still not getting their cycle. So not assuming that that's REDs. There are other factors that can cause inconsistent menstrual cycles. So just, digging in deep to that area, I think, is something that I encourage RDs to do if you're working in that space.
Awesome. In terms of resources for that, are there any references or areas that you, or other experts in the area that you suggest people lean towards?
Christy Elliott Sale definitely is.
Oh, yeah.
In that area out of the UK. She's top notch in that area.
Yeah.
LJMU is doing a little bit of work in that area, but they just published I can't remember the name of the author right now, but one of their PhD students, I believe, or postdocs, just published an interesting case study in a female soccer player, basically discussing the effect of stress on menstrual cycle, and telling the story of doing an entire Reds workup and coming to the conclusion that this specific case study was not due to low energy availability, or the signs and symptoms of Reds were not due to low energy availability. So the tools that they worked with this athlete to get her menstrual cycle back were different tools than we would, jump to conclusion with. So yeah, those would be the two sort of go-to areas I would recommend. And then of course, Kate Ackerman is she has a female athlete conference that she's started. I have to find out the name of her new clinic. I can't remember, but she's done a fantastic job pulling international researchers together to have a center for female athletes.
Yeah. Awesome. Amazing. And let's see, in terms of, I want to be mindful of time here because we are getting close, but in terms of insights into the future of sports performance, nutrition, and kind of the age of social media and all the stuff that's out there, how do you suggest, whether it's, people who are trying to become future RDs or maybe just our general listeners who are athletes, how should they sift through this information and world?
I'll let Jen take this one. She's our Insta queen. And
no, I literally hate it. Well, the one thing I like to say now that I have a platform is don't go by the number of somebody's followers, go by their actual credentials and experience. I learned just through doing some research that they said something like 1 in 4 accounts over 10K followers have probably purchased those followers. And so that was really enlightening to me because I'm not a tech guru with social media. And I just was kind of trying to understand even just some performance nutrition professionals that have really, they're 1 or 2 years out of school. They've got these really fancy IG platforms. They've got 25, 30,000 followers, and they've got no experience.
Yikes.
And I'm just kind of like, wow, okay, well, yeah, when you're somebody who's not, when you're in a certain generation and you go on IG and you say, wow, she's got 30K followers and her stuff looks all really nice. And, but then it's trash, like truthfully from what the topic is and the depth of it is. I always just say, you really have to check somebody out, just go and read their bio, see their experience, especially if you're going to be using this person for your own, performance nutrition needs. It doesn't, followers don't matter, like in one of my rants, I said, Louise Burke, who literally wrote the book on performance nutrition, has 1,900 followers and 3 posts on Insta. Yeah. And if you were to see her profile, you'd be like, who is this person? But, and she's literally the OG, the
queen. Yeah.
So I'm just like, that's just one thing that drives me nuts. Yeah. I really, really do feel that, especially in the US, that we're in this really interesting time of overflow of job demand, a lot of jobs coming open with not necessarily enough people to fill them. And so I really do believe that there's a lot of RDs jumping into positions where they're director, running programs, building programs, and they're right out of school. I've seen it happen with a few of my interns, right out of school, director position. And I do think that that's happening, and that's okay. I've been there. 1 year experience running the first sport nutrition program in Canada and bumbling along the way. But I really do think that mentorship and aligning yourself with a good mentor to help you steer that process is vital. Because you are then setting the standard for the future of that program and where it goes and how much people get paid and the perception of sport nutrition with the people you work with. So there's a lot of responsibility, I think, when you're thrown into that position. And I think you owe it to yourself and the profession to buddy up with a mentor that will help you kind of get it right. And there'll be a snowball effect for the profession from that.
Yeah. Are you seeing mentorship positions being posted, or is that more of just a networking thing and saying, hey, Jen, can I shadow you or, follow you around for the month?
It's kind of haphazard right now. There is a mentorship program for the Academy of Nutrition and the Shiplin group. I always say it wrong, sorry. They have kind of a mentorship program there. I know that through the CPSDA, there's a SNP program, but you kind of have to fellow with someone. But really, and it's something that Dana and I want to develop as part of our program, because really you don't, like, I can't go be a SNP if I have the job, like I have to do it.
Yeah.
So we're trying to, one of our long-term goals is to really develop a healthy, like, mentorship program exactly for that, where we would bring on not only Dana and I, but advisory board of really, like, not just anybody who wants to do it, but like really established RDs who have a commitment in their heart to growing that, and offering that as a service to young RDs in those positions. Because like I said, I've seen it crash and burn. And I've seen it, and I see the shape of and the polarization of our pay scale right now. People getting directorship positions for $30K a year, and then people making $250K a year. There's a polarization of that. Not that we're ever going to get to a standard. I think it's too big, but you owe it to your program to set it up properly, just for the people that are going to come behind you once you leave and go into your next endeavor.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Well, we will start to tie things up here. We have to, of course, reveal Jen's truth or
can I add one more thing for the general listener in terms of sifting through?
Yes, please.
Experts. Dr. Nick Tiller has amazing content on scientific skepticism, and it's written for, the general population. His website's awesome. He has like all the top things of like barefoot running, cupping, some nutritional stuff there too, detoxes. And he's, just a really great presenter, but he breaks down like, hey, this is the way you need to approach some of this snake oil science. Here's how to develop a healthy skepticism. So I encourage you, it's nbtiller, I think, .com. Okay. And then he's got all his publications there as well. He's not just some guy being like, hey, I know how to break down marketing claims. He's actually like a professor, and I think maybe he's postdoctoral professor, but awesome guy.
Perfect.
So, check that out too. All right,
we'll
back
link
to you.
that in the show notes. So Jen, you had told us that you grew up in the country, used to be a competitive kickboxer, and ride dirt bikes. Amanda said you did not grow up in the country, which I'm kind of thinking Amanda was right now after what we learned today. I said that you did not used to be a competitive kickboxer. Which one was your lie?
Amanda was right. I actually grew up in the city of Toronto. I live in the country now. I'm a country girl at heart, but I grew up in the city. And so the two truths were, yes, I used to be a competitive kickboxer.
Amazing.
That was a really, that's actually where I developed
my hostel with drug dealers.
That's actually where, like, honestly, people were like, what's the best job you ever had? And it was working with combat sports. Like, hands down, that time in my career was the best, because those are my people that hit people are my people. And there's such a
can't hit anyone.
Dana likes
to watch MMA.
Well, Dana likes I think you people, like, you endurance. I think that's very masochistic. Like, I'm just when you said you were doing a 100-mile bike race, I'm like, that sounds awful.
Bad idea. 5
punches to the head over that any day. Like,
oh man. Well, that's impressive. And you ride dirt bikes too. So
I have my motorcycle license. Nice. But we have we're dirt bikers. Like it's road legal, but I'm more on the trails. And so, awesome. I don't go too fast on that, but it's just kind of a little hobby my husband and I have.
Fun. And you're based out of Colorado, right?
Yes,
right now?
I'm in Colorado Springs. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure you guys have lots of good trails to do that out there. That's
endless.
Great. Yeah.
Endless.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty much a mecca for anything bicycle out here. Any type of bike. We got
epic. My husband and I, we just road trip to Paonia, Colorado, like a couple weekends ago. And we saw like the big sand dunes and like, was it like Eastern Utah where people have like the 4-wheelers and like, there's so much space out there to do that kind of stuff.
Yes,
so
it's endless, truly. Yeah.
Amazing. Okay. So what's coming down the pipeline for you guys next? Break it down for us.
Jen and I are going to high five at a conference next week.
Sweet.
Jen's presenting, she launched sort of with CPSDA, a big football symposium.
Amazing.
I'm sure a lot of your listeners will see her there.
Yeah.
And then, we're launching this course, and
amazing.
Just kind of building awareness and what we're trying to accomplish with performance nutrition professionals.
Awesome. And can you share the dates again for the course for the listeners, and then the 5 module topics you're covering?
Yeah, go for it, Jen.
Yeah. So we're June 23rd, 24th, 25th in Colorado Springs at University of Colorado, Colorado Springs. And our modules are supplement science, body comp assessment, 360 hydration assessment, metabolic fueling, and biomarker assessment.
Amazing. And we will, as we mentioned, include the link for registration for that in the show notes for the listeners. So you guys can get over there and get some hands-on learning and networking done with Jen and Dana. This has been amazing, ladies. Thank you so much for joining us. So informative. I'm sure there's so many more stories you could share, but such a wealth of information. So much appreciated. And thank you again so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much. I love what you're doing with Nutrition Revolution. So definitely happy to support.
Amazing.
Happy to support you guys and your great work.
Thank you.